Hi there. Welcome to this tool time presentation. The topic for discussion is the ABC of REBT, Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy. As I go through this presentation, perhaps I'll cut myself some slack and breathe. So I feel myself getting upset or disturbed or being a little bit unsettled. I might breathe in through my nose for 4, hold for a second, out through my mouth for 8, hold for a second. Especially my diaphragmic or belly breathing, I might focus on that. Apparently focusing on diaphragmic or belly breathing reduces nervous tension by 40 to 60%. I commend that to you as something perhaps worthy of consideration. So breathing in through my nose for 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, hold. Having said all that, discomfort might actually indicate that growth is occurring or is becoming a bit more possible. So if I'm getting a bit unsettled or disturbed or feeling a bit uncomfortable, maybe growth is occurring or is becoming more likely. Rats. I might sit with it for a while and see what's happening for me and then breathe my way through it. Or breathe my way through it and allow and give myself permission to feel it. I might choose to do what I can with what I have where I am. Do what I can with what I have where I am. In this presentation, and as a result of it, I ain't got to do nothing. I'm not required to do anything. I might choose to, however. So if I see something in this presentation, I think, oh no, I don't like the look of that. I wouldn't be doing that. I can put it aside and not look at it ever again, or maybe come back to it later when I feel it might be helpful to me. It's entirely up to me. If I see something in this presentation that I think, hey, that could help me, I might actually grab it and run with it. It's entirely up to me. I ain't got to do nothing. I'm not required to do anything. I might choose to, however. A quote taken from someone will be changed to make it first person. That is speaking from I, me, or my. Less absolute. That is take out always, never, and should and must. And less telling. It is still attributed to that person where possible. So if you think Confucius would never have spoken about the internet, I haven't gone quite that far. Where you see 2 question marks together on a slide, please consider pausing the presentation and writing your answer in your journal or on a piece of paper, or just pondering it for a moment and seeing what you can come up with. Apparently, action is really helpful. Of course, you ain't got to do nothing. Out of a damp and gloomy day, out of solitude, out of a loveless word directed at me, a conclusion grows up in me like a fungus. One morning it is there, I know not how, and it gazes upon me, morose and grey. Woe to a thinker who is, rather than a gardener, only the soil of a plant that might grow in them. Well done, Friedrich Nietzsche. And thanks very much to Lobster Tank for presenting that quote to me. This presentation is designed to challenge me to maybe choose to be, if I want to be, a tiny bit more of a gardener with a thought or emotion of mine, rather than simply a soil non-questioner. More of me deciding what type of thought I might choose to dwell with slightly more often, to maybe choose to nurture and grow a thought I might prefer to spend time with slightly more often. I don't have to throw myself out and start again. I'm not broken, a robot from another planet. I might choose to adjust something that I'm doing if I want to. I ain't got to do nothing. Just because someone wants to plant that thought in my mind does not mean I am required to let it take root. Even though a thought has always grown in my mind, I might still attempt to cut a bit of it off and attempt to dig out some of the root. I might choose to grow a thought I prefer a tiny little bit more often. If anyone's saying anything in this presentation is easy, it means they've obviously not attempted it. An idea I might like to entertain is that perhaps it's a little bit more possible than my wonderful darling brain is telling me right at the moment. Thanks, brain. managing a thought, a feeling, or a behaviour. This link is in the description below. Please feel free to click on it if you'd like to and explore what might be in it that could be helpful to you. Of course, you ain't got to do nothing. What might an ABC be designed to assist with? Assist me to dismiss or challenge or examine an unhelpful thought of mine, take it a bit less seriously, perhaps. Maybe examine a thought of mine a bit more often, take a little more of an active response role, less of a passive react role. Maybe lessen a little my potential emotional overreaction, lessen a little my unnecessary self-induced suffering. Thanks, brain. In what way might I be behaving or reacting a little like an unhelpful thought? Might be a thought of mine. As a common human, that is something that I am likely to be doing. Doesn't mean I'm broken or a robot or from another planet or need to throw myself out and start again. It means if I pay attention, maybe I could actually work with it a bit more helpfully. A potential goal for today might be to seek to identify and reduce my very human tendency toward an absolutistic thought. Thanks, brain. Must, should, have to, ought to, can't, need to, and an absolute qualifier. Always, never, every time. If I'm saying these things, perhaps I'm human. Who would have thought? What might I do? Why might I do an ABC in writing? That's easy for me to say. Why might I do an ABC in writing? An amateur practices until they get it mostly right. A professional practices until they struggle to get it wrong. Wow. How might I move toward expert from novice in doing an ABC? Possibly doing one in writing could be a good start. I might do 7 as a bit of a challenge. There was a participant in the meeting called Geeta. I trust you're keeping well, Geeta. They did 30 in 30 days, and their growth and development was startling. They exploded forward. Go, you good thing. What an ABC might be, an ABC might help me to look at a degree to which I may be unnecessarily and unhelpfully upsetting myself as a common human. Rather than ABC making me a doormat, I might still choose to thoroughly, passionately, and earnestly put my case or what suits me as a person. I might choose to give myself a right to ask to be treated with respect and consideration. This isn't the same as I have a right to be treated with respect and consideration. The other person might say, who says you have the right to attempt to control me and what I say and do? I might still choose to give myself a right to ask to be treated with respect and consideration because I do that. In the second, I am making an unenforceable demand on the other person or my life in general. The ABC model, A is an activating event or thought, a fact, something that has occurred. B, my belief or perception about an event or thought, or the way a person acting the way I am acting would perhaps be likely to be thinking or behaving or believing. Let's try. C equals consequence of my emotional reaction to B. D, disputing my closely held belief, questioning it, interviewing it, asking it how it's being helpful to me. E is my effective or helpful new belief that I develop maybe over time, de-escalating a demand back to a preference. It might seem to me that my emotional consequence comes automatically from the activating event or thought. My emotional consequence seems to happen because of the activating event or thought. While that is probably true to a degree, certainly a trip to Hawaii is more appealing to me than getting a root canal done. Often the magnitude or duration of my emotional consequence is not in keeping with my activating event or thought. In rational emotive behaviour therapy, it is held that perhaps my emotional consequence, my C, more closely equals my B or belief or my way of interacting. My belief or perception or demand about the event or thought may cause an emotional overreaction in me. An emotion might be a grand servant, however, it is a very poor master. Through an ABC, it may be possible to dramatically reduce or eliminate my extra emotional response, at least the unhelpful or destructive part of my emotional response. An emotion might be a grand servant, however, it is a very poor master. An emotion is indeed a grand servant. One person lost their ability to feel emotion through a tumour, another person through a stroke. Both were rendered unable to make a decision or to weigh up the relative importance of two choices. One of them was a salesperson and they couldn't sell anything, couldn't sell a drink of water to a dying person in the desert because they lost their ability to feel and be with an emotion. Wow. A helpful emotion is likely essential in my life well lived. Maybe an emotion developed over time through my hierarchy of values is seen as incredibly helpful in my more meaningfully lived life. If you haven't had a look at the hierarchy of values, I commend it to you as something worth having a look at. I am choosing how I feel or experience a thought of mine. My thought is like water flowing off a duck. The duck can grab the water and think it is the water, and it will still be a duck. I am the duck rather than the water. Rather than a thought, I am me. Thanks, Dr. Amy Johnson. You be an unhelpful belief, this conditioning, this wall or ceiling or container that I might have or find myself in, where might it have come from? How did I find myself in this wonderfully happy circumstance? Maybe a teacher, a friend, a family member, a member of the clergy, a bully, thanks for that, a media, the unhelpfully called social media, maybe an unhelpful conclusion from my personal experience I have drawn and now hold close in an attempt to keep me a bit more comfortable, at ease and certain. Usually it limits a behaviour choice of mine. So as a common human, what I tend to do as I live my life is best guess my way through it. Oh, I didn't like that. I might do this. That's how I am learning to live as a human, best guessing my way through life. Wonder if I can do that a little bit differently. It might sit there as a traffic director between an experience of mine and a potential emotion of mine, or it might be a way of acting that requires or fuels a certain belief of mine. I must never feel that or this way ever again. It might be able to be challenged. Once again, if anyone's saying that what's in here is easy, they've obviously not attempted it. What my wonderful brain might be able to entertain, and perhaps it's a little bit more possible than it's currently telling me. Thanks, brain. ABC, a quick look. I commend that to you as something worth having a bit of a look at and maybe sitting with for a while and just seeing what comes up for you. Of course, you ain't got to do nothing. ABC, a crash course. A, the activating situation or thought or experience. Drunk people walk past outside my home, making some noise in the very early morning and wake me up. I live down the street from a large bar. What emotional reaction might I have? Please consider pausing the presentation and maybe jotting down or thinking about an emotional reaction that I might have or that you might have. I've got my emotional consequence or reaction. I feel angry. I feel bad. I lie awake feeling angry and upset and don't get back to sleep for a long, long time. I stew about it all the time. I ruminate. I chew it over. I tell everybody about it I see. What might I do? I know. I'll open up the window and shout at each person and group. That'll work. I might go down and confront each person and group angrily. I might use the hose on them. That's a good idea. I might demand at the bar in my pajamas that the bar close. I might demand the laws are changed. I might call the police every time a group or person walks past. How could that possibly go wrong? How might one of these possible solutions work out for me as a person? Please consider the presentation, pausing the presentation and maybe jotting down something or pondering it. What belief might I have that might fuel my emotional response, my possible demand on this situation or a person walking past my home? Please consider pausing the presentation and maybe jotting something down. UB, unhelpful belief I might have about A, the activating event of people walking past, a B, which might actually cause my emotional consequence, a way of reacting that requires or reinforces an unhelpful belief. They must not make any noise. They should not make any noise. How dare they make noise? It isn't fair. Someone should do something about it. My life sucks and I can't stand it. Potentially helpful solution to that wonderful frame of mind, which if I'm having that frame of mind, rather than being broken or a robot or from another planet or need to throw myself out and start again, turns out I could be human. Wow, who would have thought? Letting go might demand a tiny little bit, as much as I am able to at this time. Please consider clicking on this link in the description box below. Of course, you don't have to do anything. D, I might choose to dispute or question an unhelpful or irrational belief in B by turning it into an open-ended question and looking for a possible answer. Because I say that they must not or should not make any noise, how does it then follow that they won't? Oh, I don't suppose it follows at all. They just do their own thing. Why mustn't they make any noise? Oh, where is that commandment written in stone in the universe? Probably nowhere, because they do make noise. How common is it that an intoxicated person would do this sort of thing? Oh, gee, very common, I'd imagine. A drunk person tends to lose awareness of the world around them. They tend to lose caring contact with an other person. They tend to become inconsiderate and sometimes belligerent. Who or what might determine fair and unfair? Life seems to occur without fear or favour. Certainly this part of my life, this tiny part of my day, might require some effort or awareness on my part or some letting go. What part of my life might be helpful or might I be a bit grateful for? Well, I could do without a noisy person walking past. I'm really close to the shops and a great cafe. How might this belief be keeping me safe, sober and alive? Well, it isn't. It is really unhelpful. I'm stressing myself about this. My blood pressure's gone through the roof. I've been punched and a person now makes a point to annoy me by throwing things into my front garden. It is actually very destructive for me and my well-being. I'm getting enemies everywhere. E, effective new thought or belief, perhaps helpful thought or belief, looking to move a little closer to something helpful or non-demanding, a preference instead of an unhelpful belief. What might form part of my new E, my preference or acceptance-based effective new belief? Please consider pausing the presentation and maybe jotting something down or thinking about something if you'd like to. Oh, well, a drunken person tends to be noisy. I'd rather they weren't. It's no big deal. It is very common that a drunk person might make some noise on their way home. I choose to stay calm about this and I choose to notice it less. I meditate a little. I let it go a little. I seek peace a little. Rather than being a problem for me, it is likely a greater problem for the person, their life and their health. I wish them a little peace in their life. When they wake me, I will say, a drunk person who passes in the night, taking care to spell it right. I trust they will get home all right, and I go back to sleep. When that person wakes, they will have all the after effects of their behaviour. I choose to have less or as few as I am able from this encounter. I trust they get home safely and their life is pretty much okay. That may sound like a bit of a Mother Teresa presentation. However, maybe I could get a little bit towards it over time. This type of new effective belief that is a bit more preference-based and accepting. What might a new emotional response of mine be if I have that belief instead of musts and shoulds and have tos? Please consider pausing the presentation and maybe jotting something down. I've decided I could be a little bit more at peace and a little bit more able to function a little bit more effectively. So I'm not going to throw myself out and start again. I'm going to gradually improve over time. I might still speak to a local government body. I might still speak to the bar about letting a person know to leave quietly while acknowledging it is unlikely to work and also not giving them my home address. I might still choose to look for elsewhere to live after I weigh up a benefit or two of living here, do a benefit cost matrix or a cost benefit analysis. I might still take any other action I see as perhaps helpful. Acceptance of a person's behaviour is not approval of it. I can accept that people walk past my home and make noise without actually approving it, liking it, loving it, or wanting it to occur. Acceptance is not approval. If you haven't had a look at the benefit cost matrix or the cost benefit analysis, I commend them to you as something worth having a look at if you'd like to. Someone trying to state their A. Oh, gee, they're having layoffs at work and my boss hates me. They will give my job to the other worker because the other worker is the boss's favourite. And the other worker has been going behind my back to the boss, I believe. What emotional consequence or reaction in me might come from this A? Please consider pausing the presentation and considering jotting something down. In my C, I've got a major meltdown. This A might be an example of a very human compounding or bundling or stacking. My challenge might be to perhaps to attempt to unbundle this A a little, make it less of a bundling, stacking, compounding thing. And if I'm doing that, it's a very common human thing to do. I might decide to make it a little bit more digestible by me by breaking it up into its components. When I'm trying to break it up, I might ask myself, what might a camera see? What might be an actual fact without any emotional interpretation on my part? Attempt to separate each out, deal with it one by one. So I've broken into 5 parts. A, they're having layoffs at work. That's a fact. Oh, A, my boss hates me. Oh, hates is emotionally laden. I might change it to seems to not like me or acts with me in an irritating way or irritated way. I've got A, the other worker will get my job, though it might not necessarily be a fact. It could be an emotional interpretation. A, the other worker is a boss's favourite. Favourite's emotion laden as well. A, other worker has been going behind my back to the boss, I believe. Which one might be better to start with? Please consider pondering those and working out which one you would start with. I might put them on a separate piece of paper, each one, maybe arrange them on the table from highest to lowest upset or most evidence to least. Probably the one that upsets me the most might be a good place to start, or the one that I feel could be my greatest growth opportunity, or I might start with the one that I feel could be easiest and maybe work up to one that I feel could be more helpful. Entirely up to me. I ain't got to do nothing. I'm free to decide my own order. I decide, A, my boss hates me. Maybe I'll lessen it to doesn't like me. I might start anywhere I choose to. Probably it might be helpful to lessen a little my interpretation and look at the way my boss is actually behaving. What might my boss be actually doing? I choose to stick with A, my boss hates me, and lessen it to they act in an abrupt and non-friendly way with me. It affects me right now, has affected me for a while, has the most lasting effect if I stay, probably could help with a future boss if I go. My emotional response to this particular thing, my boss acts in an abrupt and non-friendly way. What might my emotional response be? Please consider pausing the presentation. My C that I came up with was uncomfortable, afraid, angry, belittled. My belief of mine might be, he shouldn't treat me like this. A boss must be competent. It isn't fair. He must be fair and reasonable with me. Why can't he see I'm a nice person? Again, a very common human way for me to be thinking. D, disputation, to question or interview an unhelpful, ineffective, or irrational belief. How might it logically follow that what I'm saying is true? Where might the real evidence be for what I'm saying? How might what I'm telling myself be helping me live up to a value of mine, work toward a goal of mine, or be keeping me safe, sober, and alive? How real might this be? How true might this be? How helpful might this be? Best done as an open-ended question. So when I'm questioning a belief, it's better if it requires more than a yes or no answer, it requires a bit more elaboration. D, my disputation. Where might it be written in stone in the universe that the boss can't behave like this? Well, can't be written anywhere because that's exactly how he's behaving. D, because I believe that the boss must be fair and reasonable, how might it then follow that they will be? Well, that's definitely not going to follow because they're still doing what they're doing. D, to what degree is the boss's personality, training, education, and experience able to allow them to be more reasonable? What might they actually be going through or feeling that's causing them to behave in a less than helpful way? Dispute. While it would be nice if they could do better, and I would certainly prefer that they do better, to what degree might they be doing as well as they can, considering their personality, training, education, and experience, and what they might be currently going through? D, in what way might I be required to love or even like my boss's behaviour? Well, I'm glad that's not the case because while I accept that they are free to do it, I really don't like it. Dispute. How might my demanding that my boss interact better with me be keeping me safe, sober, and alive, or employed, or mentally well? How might I lessen this demand a tiny little bit? Dispute, question, examine, interview, gently, openly, earnestly, keenly. No thought that I have is perhaps sacred. No belief is maybe safe from scrutiny, particularly if it seems to prevent me from behaving more effectively in my life and appears to be keeping me from growing or behaving a little more peacefully. Dispute. D, dust off my belief and take a really good look at it. I might choose to do that. Once my disputation, my D is done and a bit, and I'm starting to see that my B belief is likely a bit unhelpful, unrealistic, or flawed, demanding a thing that probably cannot be satisfied, then I might choose to move on to a new E, let it go a little bit. Effective new belief, and see how that works for me. E, effective new belief. Preference-based rather than demand-based. Might you have part of an E for this situation, an effective newer belief of the boss appearing to treat me like they don't like me? Please consider pausing the tape and maybe jotting something down. This E has been developed over time. When I first started this process, of course, they were very clunky. However, they grew and improved over time and I worked on them. I commend that notion to you as something perhaps helpful. My effective new belief. While it would be really nice if my boss acted in a bit more friendly way, I'd really love it. I'm able to live with their behaviour. I accept that it is their choice. I will attempt to acknowledge to myself when what they are doing is behaving helpfully, and also attempt to point out when they are behaving unhelpfully, if I feel safe to do that, with my well-being uppermost. I might choose to simply focus on my work and express my professionalism. Rationality, professionalism is one of my values. And when I craft an E of mine from a value of mine, I feel better and am more motivated to implement it. Thanks, rationality. Repeating my E, my effective new belief, out loud with conviction helps me to cement it in my head. Thanks before you act. Trust you are keeping well. Expecting a part of the world to be pleasant to me because I am a pleasant person is like expecting a lion not to eat me because I'm a vegetarian. Wow. Lion snap. Oh, gee. Oh, that didn't work well. Oh, well. When I have an unhelpful or negative or limiting or extreme emotional reaction, I might look for the degree I might be demanding that myself and other or my life be perfect. An ABC may perhaps be helpful. Maybe even if I seem to be simply a bit controlled or a little directed by an outside influence, interaction, or a person's behaviour. Wow. Acknowledging that I may hold a belief dear to me, I may have developed this belief or pre-planned reaction in an attempt to keep myself a bit safer, a bit untroubled, a bit unfrustrated, a bit more certain, although it might now be standing a little in the way of a bit of my happiness and progress as a person. I commend that notion to you. It is probably pretty unlikely that I'll be able to do an ABC in the middle of a situation on the fly. More helpful, especially early on, to maybe choose to do it later when I've settled down a little and am feeling less under pressure. Great when I approach the point of perhaps catching a demand of mine or unhelpful emotional reaction a bit earlier, see it coming to light, and perhaps choose a little bit differently when I'm able. A marionette or self-determining. With an ABC, I might seek to take my strings gently out the hands of another or a life event, take my strings into my own hands, progress rather than perfection. Perhaps move or act in a way that better suits a value of mine or a purpose of mine a little more often. I might seek to snip those strings completely as much as I am able at this time and act independently. For an ABC, I might consider choosing to do the first few, maybe 7, in writing. That way I might see a thought more clearly and choose to really take it apart. I've also heard that the worst place to have a serious thought is in my wonderful head. A bit better to get it out in front of me on paper where I might better question it. Thanks, suburb. I trust you're keeping well. The 3 P's of personal skill improvement are 1, practice, 2, practice, 3, practice. The 4 P's of smart skill improvement are planning, practice, persistence, and patience, especially patience with my dear self and my wonderful brain. And a thought that it could be feeling is a fact. If 2 beliefs are seemingly both helpful or rational, then I'll maybe choose a one that works a bit better for me. A belief that helps me have a little more of what I find helpful in my life or a little less of what I find unhelpful in my life. Please consider clicking on the further explanation of the ABCDE in the link below. Finding the ABC. I feel so angry. I should not be treated like this. Arrested just for having a few drinks. Where might the A, the B, and the C be in that particular example? Perhaps a question. Might I be in a condition to do an ABC justice? Maybe when I've recovered a little bit from the drink or substance, perhaps then I could be in a better frame of mind to actually work on the ABC. I feel so angry. So that's an emotional consequence, a C possibly. I should not be treated like this. Well, that's probably a belief or demand. Arrested. Well, that's another A, activating event. Just for having a few drinks. Well, that's probably BS. As you know, BS stands for belief system. You did know that, didn't you? Finding the ABC. Being fired is so depressing. I'll never get another job. This proves how useless I really am. Where might the A, the B, and the C be in this one? Being fired, well, that's an A, activating event, an actual thing that occurred, is so depressing. Well, that's a emotional consequence or maybe a belief that I've got that could possibly be challenged. I'll never, well, that's a belief for sure, get another job. This proves, well, that's another belief, how useless, another belief, I really am. Wow, another belief. I'm being myself to a freaking standstill. Come on, brain, lighten up on me. There is no person walking the face of the earth who has demonstrated more attempts at courage, dignity, honesty, and integrity on a daily basis than a person who formerly was in full flight, unhelpful, addictive behaviour and is now seeking a different life and is on a path of growth and self-discovery. Go, you good thing. That is about the truest statement you'll ever see in your life, I feel. Thanks, HughK. Rather than ABC making me a doormat, it is much more likely to allow me to set myself free to fly. I give myself the right to choose to ask to be treated with respect and consideration. I give myself the right to choose to distance myself from a person who is unwilling or unable to treat me as I respectfully request they do. They are free to choose whatever they do, and then I'll make my choice. It is likely helpful that I might choose to have a closely held belief, perhaps especially in my ability to make a bit more helpful choice at some point. My discovery process. I believe I might do a little better at some time. I believe this might be a process of gradual discovery and some effort on my part. Do you think? I believe in a value of mine and put in some effort to express it a little more and hold it dearer to me. I'll go, you good thing. Rather than being important what I believe, it is likely more important that I believe in something a bit more helpful, my more active choice. It has been said in the past, show me a miracle and I'll believe. When I believe in something a bit more helpful, I'll show my world a miracle called ME. ABC thread, an example. It came off the Smart Recovery website, site with all the names have been removed, I trust. I've done that. So if you read through it, you might get a little bit more of a feeling for an ABC. It's an example rather than perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. It's an example that I might choose to work with, as your early examples will be. A thought of mine is like a cloud in the sky. It floats past and I'm not required to walk along with it. It might also conceal my sunlight, which is really me, from me. Wow, thanks, Dr. Amy. A thought of mine is an impersonal and temporary human experience. What I believe about a thought, make of a thought, how I relate to a thought, interact with a thought, only that gives it substance. I might be a bit more able to, over time, choose to see a thought as ebbing and flowing, impersonal, unstable, unsubstantial. Wow, Dr. Amy, trust your work is proceeding. B, belief, way of behaving, orientation, inclination, attitude. BS, belief system. See, I told you. Although it could have been the other BS with that wonderful person. Move a little along the line when I can, relax into it, from absolute must, should, have to, can't, need to, want, demand, to preference-based, desire, like, select, choose, rather, prefer, ask. Relax along that line a little bit when I am able and can. In a beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In an expert mind, there are few. If you're new to this process, you're very, very fortunate because your brain will come up with things that everyone else has not seen. So I do commend you that process. That's Buddha, welcomes you as a newcomer. I choose a little bit of my hope rather than a bit of a hurt of mine shapes my future. I choose that a bit of my hope rather than a bit of a hurt of mine shapes my future. Thanks, Robert. It ain't what I don't know that gets me into trouble. It's what I know for sure that just ain't so. From the movie The Big Short. While this is a fake Mark Twain quote, it was attributed to Mark Twain in the movie The Big Short. It is very much alive and well in the spirit of an ABC. It ain't what I don't know that gets me into trouble. It's what I know for sure that just ain't so. A thought disguising itself as a fact. Thanks, brain. If someone tells me that what is in this presentation is easy, it means they have obviously not tried to do it. A thing that I might like to entertain or consider is that a thing in here is perhaps a little bit more possible than my wonderful darling brain is telling me right at this particular moment. Thanks, brain. You human thing, you. Whatever I can manage to do at this particular time is wonderfully okay. I am at the coalface. I'm the one doing the work. If I'm struggling, I'm at the coalface. I'm doing the work. I'll get there eventually. Congratulations on using your power of choice and taking an action to be here. Not only is that potentially pretty helpful, it doesn't look all that powerless to me. Thanks, brain. These are the resources. They're in the link. They're in the description below. The link to them, please consider clicking on them. Most of the quotes, if not all of them, will be in those resources. I got a bit from this presentation. Maybe I'll give a bit. A light came on for me a bit. Perhaps I'll drop some money in for the light bill. Please consider donating to whoever or whatever helps you a little. When I was in full flight addictive behavior, I'd throw money around like there was no tomorrow. As soon as I started improving my behavior, I became very frugal. Go figure. I'd prefer you to donate to the Greater Good in Action website. It's also the greatergood.berkeley.edu donate, but it's also the GGIA website. That there should be a link there to that as well. There's a number of different things that I can do to grow and improve as a person on that website. I commend it to you. It's worth having a look at. Congratulations on being here. I commend and acknowledge you as a person for attempting to do something a little bit differently. I do trust it will go for you as well as you prefer it to. I do commend and acknowledge you for having a go. I'm sorry I won't get to meet you or see you. My heart goes out to you. Go, you good thing.